Welcome back to the podcast. Grab a cup of coffee, or if you're driving, just settle into your seat, because today, we are going to go on a journey that challenges the very foundation of how we view the human body, the human mind, and the invisible threads that connect us all. I want to start by asking you a deeply uncomfortable question. It's a question we spend our entire lives running away from, drowning it out with our busy schedules, our glowing screens, and our endless to-do lists. But I want you to face it right now, just for a moment. If a doctor walked into the room today, looked you dead in the eye, and told you that you had exactly 3 days left to live, what would you do? Think about it. 72 hours. That's it. The hourglass has been flipped, and the sand is almost completely gone. Most of us would immediately say, I'd spend it with my family. Some might say they would fly to Paris, or go skydiving, or try to right a past wrong. We associate our final moments with grand, sweeping gestures or desperate clinging to our closest loved ones. But what if your final wish, the very last thing you wanted to do on this earth, was to sit in a crowded auditorium and listen to a motivational speaker? It sounds almost absurd, doesn't it? But that is exactly what happens in a profound narrative known as by Noi Chien, or The Talk. A biographical account by the legendary speaker and author, Victor Hansen. You probably know Hansen as the co-creator of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. A man who has sold hundreds of millions of books and spoken to massive crowds all over the globe. But this particular story isn't about book sales, and it isn't about traditional success. It is about a moment where the polished veneer of professional speaking collided violently with the raw, bleeding edge of human mortality. And today, we are going to do a massive deep dive into this story, dissecting its narrative structure, its core philosophical arguments, and what it means for every single one of us listening right now. Let's set the scene. Picture Victor Hansen. It's the late 20th century. He is grinding. He has just taken a brutal, exhausting overnight flight from Washington, D.C., all the way to Denver, Colorado. Have you ever taken one of those red-eye flights where you can't sleep, the air in the cabin is stale, your knees ache, and you step off the plane feeling like a hollowed-out shell of a human being? That is where Hansen is at. He arrives at the Mile High Church in Denver, physically depleted, running entirely on fumes. And he's not there to rest. He is scheduled to lead 3 separate church services and a massive afternoon workshop. He is empty, yet he is expected to pour out energy into thousands of people. Almost immediately upon his arrival, the universe throws a massive wrench into his routine. He is approached by a man named Dr. Fred Voigt. Dr. Voigt comes to Hansen with a request from the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Now, we all know Make-A-Wish. It's a beautiful organization that grants the final requests of terminally ill children. Usually, these kids want to go to Disneyland, or they want to meet a Hollywood A-lister, a famous athlete, or a pop star. They want a moment of pure, unadulterated escapism. But Dr. Voigt tells Hansen about a 17-year-old girl named Amy Graham. Amy has terminal leukemia. Her body has been ravaged by the disease, and her doctors have officially thrown in the towel. Medical science has reached its absolute limit. They have told Amy and her family that she has merely 3 days left to live. 3 days. And her Make-A-Wish request? She doesn't want Mickey Mouse. She doesn't want to meet a movie star. She wants to attend Victor Hansen's motivational seminar. When you read the text of The Talk, you immediately feel the weight of Hansen's internal struggle at this moment. It is a profound moment of vulnerability and, frankly, imposter syndrome. Imagine being Hansen. You are exhausted. You make your living telling people how to achieve their goals, how to be positive, how to succeed in business and in life. And suddenly you are faced with a dying child who has chosen you as her final experience on Earth. Hansen is shocked. He questions himself. Why me? What could I possibly say to a girl who is about to step into the abyss of death? How do my platitudes about success mean anything to someone whose biological clock has stopped ticking? This is the brilliant setup of the narrative. It forces a radical shift. Hansen realizes, consciously or subconsciously, that he cannot just be a professional speaker today. The slick, rehearsed routines won't cut it. He has to become something deeper. He has to tap into the archetype of the spiritual healer. He has to transition from a man who talks at people to a man who channels energy for people. And then, he meets Amy. The text gives us these incredibly specific, heart-wrenching visual details that paint a picture of utter fragility. When Hansen sees her, she is wearing a brightly colored red and orange scarf. Why? To hide a head that has been left completely bald by the harsh, burning chemicals of chemotherapy. She is described as pale, weak, almost ghostly. The use of the word ghostly is no accident here. She is a phantom, a girl caught in the liminal space between the world of the living and the world of the dead. She is physically fading away right in front of him. But here is where the story pivots from a tragedy into a study of human resilience. Despite her ghostly appearance, despite the fact that the smartest medical minds in the world have told her to go home and prepare to die, Amy has a fire burning inside her. She tells Hansen that she has two very specific goals. Goal number 1, she wants to graduate high school. Goal number 1.5, or 2, she wants to attend his lecture. Let's pause here and talk about the first major philosophical pillar of this text, the power of purpose. Why does it matter that Amy had goals? In the medical world, a prognosis is often treated as a prophecy. A doctor says, "You have 3 days," and the patient's psychology often immediately conforms to that timeline. The body shuts down because the mind has accepted the finish line. But Amy refused the finish line. She anchored her mind to 2 future events, graduating and attending the seminar. This echoes the profound work of Victor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor who wrote Man's Search for Meaning. Frankl observed that the prisoners in the concentration camps who survived were often those who had a deeply held purpose, a reason to live that extended beyond their current suffering. He famously quoted Nietzsche, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow." Amy had her why. And the text argues, quite convincingly, that this clear, defined purpose provided her with the invisible mental and spiritual strength required to defy the rigid, material expectations of her doctors. Her goals acted as a tether, tying her ghostly form to the physical world, refusing to let her drift away. So, we move into the Sunday afternoon workshop. The room is packed. Over 1,000 people are in attendance. The air is thick with anticipation. Hansen takes the stage. Now, remember, he started this journey physically depleted, hollowed out by travel and exhaustion. But seeing Amy's weakness, witnessing this fragile girl who used the last ounces of her life force just to be in the room, ignites something inside him. The logical flow of the narrative here is brilliant. Exhaustion transforms into inspiration. He draws energy from her sheer will to exist. Hansen looks out at the crowd of over 1,000 people, and he makes a radical decision. He abandons the standard motivational script. He pivots the entire seminar away from traditional self-help and turns it into a massive, live experiment in practical, energetic healing. He begins to speak about his global research. He tells the audience about what he has learned traveling through the United States, Canada, Malaysia, New Zealand, and Australia. He introduces them to the concept of healing energy, or bioenergy. Now, if you are a skeptic, this is the part of the story where your radar might start pinging. Healing energy? Bioenergy? It sounds like New Age mysticism. But Hansen frames it in a way that is incredibly grounded. He argues for the concept of universal healing potential. He posits that this energy is not some magical gift bestowed upon a chosen few by the divine. It is not supernatural. It is entirely natural. It is an inherent human capacity. He tells the audience that 100% of human beings possess this bioenergy. Yes, he admits. Maybe only about 5% of the population has this energy flowing strongly enough to be what we would call professional healers, or shamans, or medical intuitives. But the baseline energy exists in everyone. To prove it, he doesn't just talk. He demands action. He guides the audience through a specific methodology. If you are listening to this right now, and you aren't driving, I want you to actually do this with me. It's what Hansen told that crowd of 1,000 people to do. He instructed them to hold their hands out and rub their palms together vigorously. Just rub them together, fast and hard, creating friction. Do it until you feel the heat building up in the skin. And then, he told them to stop and slowly pull their hands apart, just about 2 inches, or 5 centimeters. If you do this, you will feel it. Between your palms, there is a sensation. It feels like a magnetic resistance, or a faint, buzzing warmth, almost like an invisible ball of taffy stretching between your hands. That, Hansen explained to the crowd, is your bioenergy. That is the life force that animates your physical body. It's an incredibly powerful rhetorical and practical device. By having the audience perform this hand-rubbing exercise, Hansen bypassed their logical, skeptical brains and gave them immediate, sensory, undeniable evidence of their own energy. He showed them that they were not just meat and bone, they were batteries. And this leads us to the crux of Hansen's logic. If 100% of people have this energy, and one single person's energy is relatively small, what happens if you aggregate it? What happens if you take 1,000 separate, small batteries, and you wire them all together in a single circuit? And you aim all of that combined power at one specific target? This brings us to the climax of the story, and it is a moment of profound emotional and spiritual intensity. Hansen makes a spontaneous, unscripted decision. He calls Amy Graham to the stage. Picture the scene. 1,000 people are watching. The room is dead silent. Amy is so incredibly weak that she cannot even stand on her own. Her doctors had strictly forbidden her from walking for 2 whole weeks prior to this day because her body was failing so spectacularly. Her father has to physically support her, practically carrying her weight. As they make the agonizingly slow journey down the aisle and up the steps to the stage, you can imagine the heartbreak in that room. You can imagine the heavy, suffocating reality of suffering staring 1,000 people right in the face. But Hansen does something crucial here. He does not position himself as the guru. He does not lay his hands on her and claim to be a miracle worker. That would be ego. Instead, he completely removes his ego from the equation. He acts merely as a facilitator. He turns to the audience, 1,000 ordinary people from Denver, Colorado, and he gives them a job. He tells them to rub their hands together again. To build up that heat. To feel that magnetic bioenergy. And then, he tells them to extend their hands toward the stage, toward this fragile, ghostly 17-year-old girl in the orange and red scarf. And to intentionally send their healing energy to her. What happens next is described in the text as an ecstatic feeling. The audience begins to chant, "Yes, yes, yes." It is a roaring wave of pure, unfiltered human intention. People are crying. Tears are streaming down the faces of strangers. The entire room rises to its feet in a massive standing ovation, not for a performance, but for a shared act of spiritual defiance. Let's do a deep dive into what is actually happening here philosophically and psychologically. The text points to the synergistic effect of community. In our modern, Western world, we are hyper-individualistic. We are taught that our minds are locked inside our own skulls, and our bodies stop at the edge of our skin. We believe that we are isolated islands of consciousness. But in that auditorium, the boundaries between those 1,000 people dissolved. The yes, yes, yes chant was not just noise, it was a rhythmic synchronizer. It was a way of aligning 1,000 individual wills into a single, laser-focused beam of high purpose. Think about the concept of a laser. A regular light bulb scatters light in every direction. It illuminates a room, but it's weak. It diffuses. But if you take that exact same amount of light, and you align all the photons so they are traveling in the exact same direction, at the exact same frequency, you create a laser beam. And a laser beam can cut through solid steel. What Hansen facilitated that day was the creation of a human laser beam. He took the scattered, diffused bioenergy of 1,000 strangers, aligned them with a single chant and a single intention, and fired it directly into the failing cellular structure of Amy Graham. The narrative suggests that the miracle that followed was not the result of one man's power, but the emergent property of a synchronized community. It was the ultimate proof that we are connected by invisible threads, and when we pull on those threads together, we can alter the fabric of reality. And the narrative does not leave us hanging in the realm of theory. It demands verification. It provides us with the resolution, the proof of the argument, broken down into two stunning updates. The short-term proof, 2 weeks after that Sunday afternoon. 2 weeks after the doctor said Amy would be dead and buried. Hansen's phone rings. It's Amy. She is not calling from the afterlife, she is calling from her home. She tells him that she went back to her doctors, the same doctors who had completely given up on her. They ran tests. And they were absolutely baffled. They found her leukemia to be in significant remission. The disease that was eating her alive had inexplicably retreated. Medical science had no explanation. The 3-day death sentence had been commuted. The long-term proof, 2 years later. Not 2 weeks, not 2 months. 2 whole years later. The phone rings again. It's Amy. She is calling to tell Mark Victor Hansen that she just got married. Let the magnitude of that sink in. A girl who was too weak to walk, a girl wearing a scarf to hide her bald head, a girl with 72 hours to live, survived to put on a wedding dress and walk down the aisle to start a new life. This brings us to the final, and perhaps most important, philosophical pillar of the text, moral responsibility. Why does Mark Victor Hansen tell this story? He doesn't tell it to brag. He tells it as an ethical command to the reader, and by extension, to you and me listening right now. The entire arc of the story is a journey from scientific failure to spiritual success. The doctors represent the absolute limit of the material, mechanical worldview. They look at the body as a machine, and when the machine's parts are broken beyond repair, they say, "It's over. Go home." They represent the 3-day prognosis. But the seminar, the collective hand-rubbing, the chanting, the shared tears, that represents the unlimited, uncharted potential of the spiritual and energetic world. It represents the 2+ years of extended life, the remission, the wedding. Hansen is arguing that we have been systematically underestimating our inherent power. We walk around all day, every day, carrying this bioenergy, this latent healing potential, and we do absolutely nothing with it. We squander it on stress, on anger, on road rage, on doom scrolling through our phones. We let the battery drain on meaningless things. But the story of Amy Graham proves that this energy is real, and it is potent. And if it is real, then we are left with a massive moral responsibility. We cannot unknow this. If 1,000 strangers in Denver, Colorado, can generate enough collective intentionality to pull a 17-year-old girl back from the brink of death, what else are we capable of? What could we do for our sick family members? What could we do for our communities? What could we do for our own broken bodies and minds? Hansen's final takeaway is a plea for us to wake up, to remember who we are and what we possess. We have a responsibility to use this power for the highest good. When we see suffering, we cannot just accept the material prognosis. We cannot just say, "Well, the experts say it's hopeless." We have to remember the friction in our hands. We have to remember the space between our palms. We have to remember that our intention, when focused and amplified by love and community, is a force of nature. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with that image. I want you to see Amy in her red and orange scarf, standing on that stage, bathed in the invisible warmth of 1,000 strangers. I want you to feel the exhaustion of Victor Hansen melting away into pure inspiration. Skepticism giving way to belief. Death giving way to life. The next time you feel helpless in the face of suffering, whether it's your own suffering or the suffering of someone you love, don't just surrender to the statistics. Don't just accept the 3-day prognosis. Remember the talk. Rub your hands together. Feel the energy that has been inside you since the day you were born. And consciously, intentionally, send it out into the world. You might just be the missing battery in the circuit that creates a miracle. Thank you for going on this journey with me today. It's a heavy story, but it's a beautiful one. It shifts the paradigm. It asks us to be bigger, to be more connected, and to take responsibility for the invisible power we wield every single day. Keep your minds open, keep your hearts focused, and I will see you on the next deep dive. Take care of yourselves, and take care of each other.